and we can move on to the final session today that deals with teaching and learning materials. And I would again like to invite Dr. Chong Shimre, Associate Professor at the National Council for Education, Research and Training, NCRT in Delhi, to chair the session. We have a number of speakers here from South Africa, from Mexico, Germany, India, talking about all the different kinds of educational material, teaching and learning material that have been developed through the program. It's very interesting. We will be running them through videos. A couple of them will be live, but they are all here to answer your questions. With this, I'd like to briefly introduce Dr. Chong as well. Um, Being an associate professor, she has also been at the helm of affairs so far as environmental education in the country is concerned, and has been coordinating projects and programs related to designing of textbooks, implementing of teacher training for environmental education across the country. She's also been a Fulbright Nehru Scholar, and she very often says that it is this period of time that really shaped her own understanding of implementation EE in India. So, Dr. Chong, it's over to you. And yeah, maybe we can have the sessions. Before we have that, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you for this opportunity to chair this session. We have heard a lot about what EE is or what ESD is in the previous session, like, for example, the ESD for 2030 and EE and the prospects of EE in India, especially with respect to the national education policy. We also heard about the capacity building programs that ESD ExpertNet has been involved in. And also, most importantly, I was very excited or it was very nice to hear about the mentoring programs and the mentees sharing about their work, rich resources that they have come out with. For example, reaching out to schools and teachers in different ways. And I thought the skill-based education that was very inspiring to me. And I was already connecting it with the internship program that was mentioned in the NEP that I mentioned during my presentation. So such skill-based projects can definitely be considered in the internship program for students, which has been highlighted in the NEP. So all of this suggests that at the end of the day, what we need is teachers need is a good resource, a good resource material that could guide them to effectively and meaningfully implement ESD in their classrooms. It's not that we are lack of resources. There are a bunch of resources, tons of resources are available online. Now that everybody is accessible to internet. So, but then if we look at the way teachers are engaged in the schools, especially in the context of India, they hardly have time to look for the right resources, So it becomes very cumbersome for them to sort out the right resources from the internet and get to those resources so that they can enhance their teaching learning process. So it's so important that we have the right kind of resources available for teachers, classroom practitioners, or even the professionals in the field. So fortunately, we have ESD ExpertNet who have been working in this area, and they have developed some great resources like training TOTs, then some resources on very comprehensive resources on Cashew, which looks at all aspects related to nutrition, climate, employment, gender, and so on, bringing out the interdisciplinarity of the topic. And also right now, ESD ExpertNet is in the process of bringing out Teacher's Handbook on handprint care, which I'm not going to elaborate on that. I'll let the speakers speak about that. And so we have a lot of good presentations and some great videos coming up, which are great resources, which can be used by teachers and other practitioners in the field. So without further ado, we'll just get on to the videos, and some of the speakers speak about the great resources that ESD ExpertNet has produced and they're working on. So I'll just hand over to Dr. Shamila Kumar with these few words.
Thank you so much, Chong. I think we can now have the videos. Thank you.
Namaskar, Adab, good morning, Ka hal ba? I hope wherever you are fine, you are safe from COVID-19, and well, I hope the vaccine finds its way to you very soon. आशा करता हूँ आप जहाँ कहीं भी हैं आप कोविड-19 से बचे हुए हैं अगर आप बीमार हैं तो आशा करते हैं कि आप जल्दी ठीक हो जाएं और वैक्सीन आप तक जल्द से जल्द पहुंच पाए। तो आज का वीडियो हम हिंदी और अंग्रेज़ी दोनों में करेंगे और आपको इसका संदर्भ जल्दी ही पता चल जाएगा। So today's video we're going to do it both in Hindi and English, wherever you may be joining us from. So well, first of all, thank you for joining in, and thank you for joining in this conference. And well, as you know, in 2015 the United Nations launched the Sustainable Development Goals, which was framed after many deliberations between various countries, various stakeholders, and a roadmap was built. So what was that roadmap? Of course, that was to do with the multiple targets which were set out. But how do we get there? How do we achieve those goals? How do we talk about them? How do we teach them? Most importantly, in our context. तो जैसा कि आपको मालूम है, संयुक्त राष्ट्र ने 2015 में सतत विकास के लिए या फिर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट कुछ गोल्स को, कुछ लक्ष्यों को फ्रेम किया था। और ये पूरी मतलब कि बहुत लोकतांत्रिक तरीके से सबकी सहमति को मिला जुला कर इसको बनाया गया था और उसके बाद फिर रास्ता तैयार किया गया 2030 तक के लिए। लेकिन ये जितने गोल्स थे और सब गोल्स जो थे, लक्ष्य और उपलक्ष्य जो थे, उनको कैसे पाया जाए, उनको कैसे अचीव किया जाए और ख़ासकर हमारे संदर्भ में उनको पढ़ाने की विधि कैसे बनाई जाए, तो इस बारे में बड़ा सोच विचार करना ज़रूरी था और वो शुरू भी हुआ। और इसमें हमारे जो ESD एक्सपर्टनेट जो है, इसने एक ख़ास भूमिका निभाई। जैसा कि आप लोगों को पता होगा कि हम लोग यूनेस्को के साथ गैप में पार्टनर्स हैं और हमने फिर ये पहल शुरू की इन 4 देशों से मिलकर, मैक्सिको, साउथ अफ्रीका, इंडिया और जर्मनी से, कि हम हमारे संदर्भ में जो भी कहानियाँ हैं, जो भी सच्ची कहानियाँ हैं, जो बिल्कुल जिनसे हम सीख सकते हैं कि किस तरह का बदलाव लाना चाहिए, हर गोल के, हर लक्ष्य के संदर्भ में किस तरह का बदलाव हम चाहते हैं, किस तरह से हम आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं, तो इस विषय में हमने थोड़ा काम करना शुरू किया। So in 2015, as we know, the United Nations framed the Sustainable Development Goals, and we carved a pathway. But how do we talk about it? How do we teach about it? That was the real problem. And so our network came together, ESD ExpertNet, the various people from various countries, and how we pulled out examples, pulled out stories of change, which would inspire us to kind of take the right direction for all of us. And not just these stories, but also how to talk about it, how to teach it. And the team that was there was, of course, the editors were Thomas Hoffman, Rajeshwari Gurana, along with contributing, but the other contributors were Satish Avate, Deepika June, there was Rosalba Thomas, Wendy Morell, Katrina Ronchevich, James Taylor, Rob O'Donoghue, Nicola Papa, Edwin Nkomo. So all these people came together to contribute. तो जैसा कि मैंने बताया कि इन सारे लोगों ने फिर इस स्टोरीज़ ऑफ चेंज और ये जो टीचिंग द SDGs, यानी सतत विकास के लिए जो शिक्षा की जो हमने जिन कहानियों का चुनाव किया, जिन बदलाव की कहानियों का चुनाव किया, उन सबको हमने संजोया और उन सबको हमने अंग्रेज़ी में सामने लाया। अब जो विधि है, अब उसे हम हिंदी में ला रहे हैं, उसका उन सबका अनुवाद करके। So now we are translating all of them into Hindi and bringing it to you. तो हिंदी में जब हम अनुवाद करते हैं, तो अनुवाद करने से, जैसे आपको मालूम होगा, कि केवल अनुवाद करना किसी कहानी का काफ़ी नहीं है, क्योंकि संदर्भ जो है वो बदल जाता है और एक भाषा से दूसरे भाषा में जाने पर आपको उस भाषा में किस तरह से उस कहानी को ज़िंदा रखा जा सके और बिल्कुल सही मायनों में समझा जा सके, इसके लिए सही प्रयास भी करनी पड़ती है। So just translating a story is not enough, but of course understanding the context is very important to be able to fully get the essence of the story. So what did we do? And of course right now 5 साल बीत चुके हैं और हम आगे बढ़ चुके हैं सतत विकास की जर्नी में। लेकिन पिछले कुछ सालों में काफ़ी ग्रोथ की काफ़ी कमी आई है। अब पिछला साल तो आप सबको मालूम है कि कोरोना की वजह से हमारी सारी अर्थव्यवस्था अस्त व्यस्त हुई है। बहुत सारे लोग बेरोज़गार हुए हैं, बहुत सारे लोग भुखमरी की तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं. So as we know, Corona has impacted economies widely all over the world. It has led to the increase of unemployment, inequality, hunger. So all of that has been increasing. असमानता की बात करें तो खासकर पूरी दुनिया में असमानता बहुत तेज़ी से फैला है, तेज़ी से बढ़ा है. अगर देखें तो जो अमीर हैं उनका वेल्थ जो है, उनकी जो पैसे, उनकी जो आय है बहुत तेज़ी से बढ़ी है, और गरीब, आपको पता है, गरीब होते जा रहे हैं. एंड ये बहुत ही चिंताजनक स्थिति है. तो और साथ ही में इन सब के साथ एक और बात जो जुड़ गई है वो है, और हम खासकर हमारे संदर्भ में वो बहुत सच हो रहा है, कि सोशल मीडिया के ज़रिए अगर हम देखें तो हमें सच क्या है और झूठ क्या है ये हमें आसानी से पता नहीं चलता है, और उसकी हमें बड़ी छानबीन करनी पड़ती है. तो कई कहानियाँ आपको सम्मुख आएंगी, बहुत सारे राय आपके सामने आएंगे, लेकिन इनमें से किसको फॉलो किया जाए और किसको छोड़ दिया जाए ये समझना बहुत जटिल विषय हो गया है. So it has become a very complex social media system that we have built. There are a lot of stories that go around. There are a lot of fake stories that go around, and we don't know how to contest it and how to choose the right ones, because truth should not be just a matter of an opinion, right? It should be about what is true and what is the good path to take. So वह सही रास्ता क्या है? तो इसके लिए और दूसरी बात तो जैसा मैंने बताया कि अनुवाद करना केवल कहानियों का काफ़ी नहीं है. तो इस बदलते हुए आयाम में और इस बदलते हुए संदर्भ में हमने एक नई टीम का गठन किया, जिसमें शमिता कुमार, जिसमें मोहम्मद कलीम, आशा वर्मा, शीतल अंटिल, शालिनी नायर, तीस्ता मुखर्जी, ये सारे लोग थे. और इन सब में से आप कुछ लोगों से आज मिलेंगे भी, देखेंगे भी उनको भी. तो इन सब का फिर हम सबका ये इस सोच से जुड़ाव था कि कैसे ऐसी कहानियों का चुनाव किया जाए जो भारतीय संदर्भ में बहुत कारगर हैं, और जिनसे और बदलते हुए इस संदर्भ में किस तरह से पूरे विश्व के लिए उससे हम कुछ खास सीख ले सकते हैं. सो वी chose a team once again to frame new stories at the national level. Do it in Hindi to begin with. To begin with, it will be in Hindi, but probably we will travel in other languages as well. And the idea is to address the new emerging challenges through these stories, and what are the new things which have become more relevant with the changing times. और इन सारी कहानियों में केवल सिर्फ कहानी बताने का ही मतलब नहीं है. यहाँ पर आपको मतलब किसको किस तरह से पढ़ाया जाए, इसमें किन सवालों का ध्यान रखा जाए, ये चाहे पुरानी किताब हो चाहे नई, इन सब का ध्यान रखा गया है. तो हम जल्द ही आपको ये समर्पित करेंगे SDG कथा और पुरानी जो कहानियों का जो संग्रह है, जो है सतत विकास को पढ़ाने के लिए की विधि. तो वी विल सून सबमिट दीज स्टोरीज टू यू, दिस बुक टू यू, for your evaluation, for your time, for your not consumption, because consumption has become a much abused word, for your engagement. And both the SDG kathas, and the focus is not just on telling you a story, but also how to engage with the story, or how to probably bring it into practice of teaching. And we invite you. We will soon be launching an initiative to invite more stories from all of you, from across the country and hopefully across the globe, so that we can have ever newer stories with ever changing context, and we continue to keep them relevant and continue to keep the drive towards sustainability on. तो हमारी आशा ये है कि हम जल्द ही आप तक ये स्टोरीज़ को ज़रूर पहुंचा सकें, लेकिन साथ ही साथ ये पहल रहेगी कि आप भी इनके साथ जुड़कर नई कहानियाँ हमें समर्पित करें, हमसे जुड़ें, और इस जुड़ाव से बदलते हुए संदर्भ की बदलती हुई चुनौतियों को हम हर तरह से उनका सामना करते रहें. यही मेरी आशा है, और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद यहाँ जुड़ने के लिए, हमें सुनने के लिए, और आशा करते हैं कि आगे भी आपसे जुड़ाव बना रहे. सो धन्यवाद, thank you, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, let's get it done. Well, good afternoon. It's Raji Gorana and Katarina Ronchevich, members of the ESD ExpertNet, and we would like to introduce you to our teaching and learning material, Cashew. So the Cashew project is a 4-country project. All the 4 countries have an interesting linkage to the cashew. Germany being a big consumer, while India, Mexico, and South Africa being producers of the cashew. This makes the cashew a familiar food item. The project follows the strategy of placing the teacher in a key position and supporting her or him with interesting and relevant resource material. One of the strongest measures to ensure EEE in creating a cadre of teachers committed to EE and ESD. They can prove to be a building block for widening the mandate of education to include EE and ESD. The Cashew project has also involved teachers working with learners with special needs, such as hard of hearing, deaf, blind, sighted learners, as well cognition and complexity, to ensure that resource materials is designed to suit inclusivity objectives and achieve the pursuit of ESD. Cashew is an opportunity for ESD. The inspiring words of Chico Mendes, a Brazilian rubber trappers leader and environmentalist. At first, I thought I was fighting to save rubber trees. Then I thought I was fighting to save Amazon rainforests. Now I realized I'm fighting for humanity. These words help us to understand why we choose cashew as the theme of our program. At first, it looks like we are learning about the cashew itself. Then we know we are learning about environmental, social, economical, political, and cultural aspects of cashew in 4 countries. Finally, cashew is a means for teaching and learning ESD with a focus on inclusivity. Teachers in this project group found the strategy useful to leverage content for learning. So cashew, a global learning challenge, this is how we call the material, is an inclusive learning material for class 9 and 10. Is a resource where we combine inclusive learning with education for sustainable development. At first glance, this looks like a resource about cashew. It is, however, a resource for learning through cashew. Botany, history, politics, cultivation, world trade, fair trade, and climate. It is learning that is created in the intersection of the cashew and environment, social, economic, political, and cultural aspects of the 4 countries of India, Germany, Mexico, and South Africa, in a way that allows all learners, regardless of gender, religion, culture, language, abilities, or social and economic conditions, to learn about global connections, to get involved in global questions, and thereby become active themselves. Firstly, the question that had to be answered by the project team was, will learning with the cashew interest and be welcoming to the students? Cashew being a familiar kernel across the country, and particularly in Goa, generated a confidence that it will evoke interest in the young learner. Second aspect that mattered was if learning would result in a sense of achievement. Cashew, its morphology, ecology, socio-economic and cultural aspects do not figure prominently in the curriculum. Learning about cashew could provide the scope to develop a sense of pride among children. For the project team, as ESD practitioners, it mattered if environmental, social, economical, and cultural aspects could generate enough awe and curiosity in the teachers as well as the learners. So being a 4-country intercultural learning material, content that could attract young learners is presented here. Learning about cashew and learning through it provides flexibility both in terms of methods, activities, and teaching learning materials. And with inclusivity on the top of the mind, the content and activities we hope would meet the needs of all children, particularly those who face barriers to learning. Can something as ambitious as global relationships be explored through these intersections with such a small and extraordinary delicacy as the cashew? We think we could. The 4 countries show different but special focus on cashew. Again, India is one of the world's biggest producer, Germany a main consumer. Mexico hosts natural resource of cashew trees in its south, produces and imports due to an increasing demand, and South Africa is trying to jump on the economic success story of cashew. These complex realities open up the chance to strengthen learners' systemic competencies in the frame of ESD. So while these measures have helped integrating EE to a great extent in the curriculum, it is still quite peripheral in special needs and inclusive education. There are as many input like infrastructure, teachers, teaching, learning material, etc., challenges as there are process challenges in pedagogy, curriculum, and attitudes. So both of which play a critical role in achieving inclusivity. Over and above this, teacher preparation is an essential aspect to work on the process aspects of inclusivity. In general, and in the context of inclusivity, education must be joyful and support all children to succeed. Content and methodology adopted by schools are crucial to achieve inclusivity. So the strength of the Cashew modules resides in how they are both open-ended explorations and adaptive to use in inclusive ways in diverse school subjects and in multidisciplinary learning contexts. With the Cashew material, we elaborated with experts in inclusive and special education from all the 4 countries. We elaborated differentiations in the area of cognition and complexity, vision and perception, hearing and communication. Here we provide designed adaptations in Word format because we believe that the teacher should have the chance to make additions or changes in the certain exercises which suits best for its learners. Yeah, guys, we hope we could give you a brief and quick run through the really complex material of the Cashew. We are looking forward.
Thank you very much for that. I can see that Rajeshwari is here. Raji, would you like to say a few words, or would you want me to play your audio?
Hi, Shamita. Hi, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible. Good to see you, Raji.
Thank you. I'll make a quick and short input to what Kata has already made. I wanted to touch upon the educational policies of the country which talk about inclusion. Before I go, I must stress that initiatives like the Conspicuous Cashew contribute to realizing the spirit of inclusion. In 2002, the country included Article 21 in the Constitution, making education a fundamental right. And in 2009, it started to be implemented as the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, or Right to Education Act. The Act ensures education to all children, irrespective of caste, class, gender, religion, ability, and so on. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 defines inclusive education as a system of education where students with and without disabilities suitably adapted to meet the learning needs of different types of students with disabilities. The recently formulated National Education Policy 2020 emphasizes, I'm quoting it directly, quote begins, education is the single greatest tool for achieving social justice and equality. Inclusive and equitable education, while indeed an essential goal in its own right, is also critical to achieving an inclusive and equitable society. The policy reaffirms that bridging the social category gaps in access, participation, learning outcomes in the school education will continue to be one of the major goals of all education sector development programs, close quote. So that is about inclusion, the thinking around inclusion in the education policies of the country. The other thing I wanted to share was how the material itself is organized. I'm going to share my screen.
I think that may not be possible. Just try it out. It was not possible earlier.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Yeah, okay. We can see the screen if you're sharing.
See the screen?
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is regarding how the material itself is organized. The material comprises a book and digital worksheets. There are chapters, and the chapters begin with information on a given theme. So there are many themes, like for instance, what you see on the screen is about natural sciences and the process of cultivation, harvesting, and the processing of cashew itself. This is followed by the most important part, which actually looking at special education needs of many, many types of special education needs. So how do you actually adapt one book? How do you write in one book, to all these various, special education needs teachers? So this methodological guide actually serves that purpose. It gives details on how should you go about adapting the given activity to the needs of your students. The book is available online. As of now, it is available in English, German, Spanish. It will soon be available in Hindi, Marathi, and Telugu. And with this, I will stop the screen share and look forward to any comments and questions that you have regarding this material. Over to you, Shamita and Dr. Shimre.
Thank you, Raji. We'll take questions at the end. We'll now move on to the next one in the series, which is about systems thinking.
Yep.
Okay, welcome to our presentation. That means Sanskritis, and my presentation on systems thinking. In 2017, UNESCO came up with a new publication on education for sustainable development, focusing especially learning objectives. Within this publication, they published 8 key competencies as they estimate to be the most crucial ones, the core center of those SD competencies which have to be developed in the context or in the frame of sustainable development. These 8 key competencies reach from critical thinking to system thinking, anticipatory, normative, and integrated problem-solving competence to strategic collaboration and self-awareness competence. Analyzing this newly published catalog of competencies by UNESCO, that is the material developing group of the ESD ExpertNet, came to the result that system thinking competencies is among these 8 competencies a very specific one, and as we estimate, the most crucial and the most important one, since, as we think and as we are convinced, the one which contributes to all the other competence development processes in a way which is stronger than others do. What is, and on the base of these thoughts, we decided to set up a learning manual or a learning and teaching manual for system thinking. But starting with this, we had to answer the question, what is system thinking? We did not want to answer this question only on its own sake, but in the frame of sustainable development. On the base of existing literature, we developed our own very complex and complicated definition of system thinking, which is, according to our understanding, the ability to describe and or visualize a complex part of reality, to express that part of reality as a model, to understand this developed model as a system, and to use the model to explain the past behavior of the system, as well as to anticipate the future behavior of the system, to anticipate and evaluate its system behavior impacts in the context or frame of sustainable development, to identify as well as to identify potential points as well as types of intervention, to generate options to act in the frame of sustainable development, and finally to assess their impacts in the frame of sustainable development and decide whether further actions are necessary or not. This definition is, in our understanding, the basic platform on which we developed the 10 steps towards systems thinking, since the definition was divided into 10 parts. And out of this, we made a manual for education for sustainable development. The content shows chapters on why this dealing with systemic thinking competence at all and how to use the book. And in the core or in the center of the book, we do have 3 approaches to 10 steps towards systems thinking competence. The first one is the theoretical backbone, where we do explain how the 10 steps could be taught or could be used to develop a learning unit which is not in a theoretical way, but which is combined with a specific topic. To understand this in more detail, we develop 2 accompanying examples. One is on the cotton topic and the other is on the potato chip. The cotton starts with the jeans and ends up with the cotton world economy and world production system, and so does the potato chip example. These 10 steps and the 10 parts of the definition are in the center, as I already mentioned, of the book, and each of the steps has its own chapter. Reading or going over these 10 steps, you will immediately understand and recognize that the quality and the intensity of the 10 steps is very much different. This we translated into a picture or in the metaphor, saying that tends to reach or to achieve the competence of systems thinking is like climbing a mountain. This climbing of a mountain is not along a regular staircase, but as nature represents itself always, it is along very irregular steps. Each of these steps show in its flat part the learning process of a single step. That means the length of this step path illustrates the time you might need to reach or to achieve the learning process which is defined for this step, while the steep part of each step shows you a situation where you are able to articulate new further leading questions, starting from a new level of understanding at the end of a flat part. That means at the end of the learning process of one of the steps. And you see, following this staircase, it is different from one step to the other again and again. This difference between the steps are defined in a central table which on 2 pages explain the specific characters of the single steps. With the help or along of 4 columns, we explain that part of the definition of the systems thinking competence. We give information about suggested activities and methods, as well as on learning output and learning outcome for each step. So if you see here the example of step 1, this is very much different from, by example, step number 6, which is very much sophisticated and very much extended if you compare it to the further shown step number 1. Each of these steps get their own chapter, as I mentioned earlier, and each of these chapters are organized and designed alike. So they always start with the headline, of course. They always give you again the total definition and the marked part with which the single chapter is dealing with. And then we do have 7 aspects in each of these step chapters. We start from the question, what does this mean? That means that we translate the definition words into everyday's words for an easier understanding. We defined what the aim of this step in the whole learning process towards systemic thinking competence is. We give information about the potential for competencies enhancement in this step, which is also illustrated, as you can see in the right lower corner. We talk about activities, tasks, and suggested learning methods, as well as conclusions, suggested further leading questions, and examples. The examples on the two cotton and potato chip examples are always linked directly so that you can start from this theoretic backbone line directly into one of the concrete topic lines of the course. To come back to our original question, whether system thinking competence really contributes to UNESCO key competencies, we would like to show you this diagram, which show all around the 8 key competencies defined by UNESCO, and then for the single step, in this case, step 1, the contribution of systems thinking course or of this manual and this learning course to the different steps. And if we go through this quite quickly, we can see that the contribution of the single steps to the competencies catalog is different, and seeing that in a total visualization, we can definitely say yes, systemic competencies courses like this contribute to all the other key competencies defined by UNESCO. In the meanwhile, we reached a stage of about 85 to 90% of the program, and we are looking forward to publish a print version within the next 2 months, 2 to 3 months. So during spring or early summer, the print version will be out, as well as the online version, which is a second product of this learning course, or a second possibility to deal with and to handle with and use this manual, as it is shown here in a first draft design, where you can see that you can choose the single steps. You can go directly to one of the examples. You will have feedback possibilities via social media, and you can also download the single step chapters as a PDF file. You have possibilities to jump or to connect words to the glossary, by example, or also to the catalog of different learning methods and so on. So far, the introduction into this new learning material, which we are going to present, as I already said, within a few months. Please, or we are looking forward to answer your further questions. Thank you.
That was an interesting session, and we do have time for questions at the end. We have another session where we have 3 speakers that deals with handprint and handprint care. Of the 3 speakers, Mr. Kartika Sarabhai will be speaking live, followed by recorded videos by Professor Rob Donoghue and Dr. Jon Carlos. Professor Rob Donoghue is also here live for answering any questions if required. So may I request my IT team to enable Mr. Kartikeya Sarabhai to go first now?
Thank you, Shabita. And it's been a really good session. I'm sorry because of the time I had to leave, so I'm going to speak to you from the car. But it's wonderful to be here. Now, this material, which is being developed under the Engagement Global program, which is collaborating with 4 countries, takes the tool of handprint and builds on it to this program called Handprint Care. The word care itself is an acronym. So C is for concern for others, A is attention to the needs of others, R is respect for others, and E is encouragement in the common good. So handprint care methodology first starts with the handprint. So I'm going to say a word or two about that. As some of you might know, the concept of handprint goes back to 2005, when in a CE program in Hyderabad, India, girls in the St. Mary's School, 10-year-old girls, started working on environmental issues and brought out this symbol of the hand. And in inquiring what this was, basically they were talking about positive change, positive action. So just like the footprint means how much we tread on the planet, what is our consumption, how much do we use utilization. The handprint started meaning about about uh, about positive action. Handprints were also used for caring at that time, holding hands for networking. But the hand was a very powerful symbol, and we found in 2007 when we it was launched and made into a global resource. Several groups around the world started using it as they do today, and it is the hand of a young girl called Shrija. My colleague Rob will just talk about it in a few minutes and talk to you more about this program. Now, this program is really aimed at primary and upper primary, which is middle school in some cases, primary and upper primary age group children, and it's basically a methodology divided up to four quadrants. The first one is really using the story and as has been discussed today. The story is a very powerful one. In fact, one of the stories which is being used here is also on the cashew, for instance. But there is a story on plastic, there's a story on water, there's a story on the migration of Amur falcon, which the chair of this session, Dr. Chong Shimre, has developed. So there are stories, but these are all true stories, true real life stories. We had a lot of debate whether we should, how do we deal with real life versus fiction in a classroom. And in today's context, when there is a lot of fuzziness about facts and fake facts and real news and wrong news and things like that, we felt it would be important to stick to true stories, and we've gone into explaining why and what in the manual. This book, the manual itself, will we hope come out in the next 2-3 months, and it is meant for teacher trainers, and is adaptable in different countries in different contexts. It is a generic module as it is just now. Now, the storytelling, for instance, let's take an example of, say, plastic. The first quadrant would really talk about the story itself, people knowing about things which they've heard. We would give a lead story, but they can bring in other stories. It's a open-ended true stories approach. So open-ended meaning people can bring in local flavor and can add to it. We then go into the next quadrant, which really looks at exploring and going into depth into the knowledge, finding out, for instance, why does plastic not decompose easily? Why does it take so long? What are some of the problems? What are some of the issues with it? And the third quadrant really goes into then in analyzing this and critical thinking. What can be done about it? What is the sort of issues? What can we do about it? And then the fourth quadrant is about practical applications and the handprint itself. So this is a methodology which we hope will work. There are some major challenges because, as we all know, subjects, and the minute you connect education to the real world is not siloed into the disciplines, and so some part of that education they would probably get in their maths class or in their science class or in social studies or something else. So how do you really deal with this, and do teachers really work together? Does one teacher take the lead? These are things which are currently being worked out. We also, for instance, there's a story on bees and how bees collect honey, how they play an important role in pollination and other things. But at that time, for instance, the story came out in India about many of the big companies using sugar in making honey, and this sort of discussion can also be used to discuss ethics in the classroom. Is sugar okay to use in honey? Would it be okay to have sugar but which bees actually collect from that sugar solution and then make the honey? Is that okay? So it forms a very interesting way in which it is doing. But you will know more about this as we go on to Rob, who will explain the whole methodology, and then to Jan Carlos, who is going to take an example and take it further. So over to you, Rob.
Settings.
Yeah, this is it.
With the origins of handprint care as ethics-led action learning. informing
Yes, this is it.
practical expansion of conventional subject teaching pedagogy using a critical realist schema for culturally situated ESD to deepen the planning of lesson sequences. And an example is drawn from the mini-SAS work with the Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, I look at the assessment of learning and change. So ESD's ethics-led handprint care processes developed around an action-centered ethic of care exemplified by 10-year-old Surija in India and Sami educators in Alta, Norway, who put respect at the heart of ESD for developing empathy and action competence. And this work had therefore originated in India around the Center for Environmental Education and became part of their global handprint care project in cooperation with other countries. So it was really interesting to look at respect for each other as an important foundation for empathy and action competence. And by definition, environmental education as ESD, as education for sustainable development, became centered on recognizing concerns, assessing value, and acting for a common good. So concern for others, attention to needs, and engagement in the common good became care, the beginnings of global cooperation and teacher education centered process that was trying to explore ESD in lesson situations of teaching a particular school subject. So ESD is an expansion of conventional teach, task, assess, task sequences emerged for me as a primary school teacher. You teach, you task the students with ideas, and then you assess. So that when we came to apply this good teaching framework to ESD, it became important to look at the care element of ethics as an expansion, where for ESD in subject teaching settings, knowledge is both acquired in the subject and mediated through the student participation in learning. So acquisition and participation become two sides of the coin, and subject knowledge becomes a foundational starting point with life experience of the students to find out about things in their area and generate data, work out solutions, and try out and assess change. And here it's possible to see it as ESD because the students will come to recognize concerns out of their experience and their learning, assess value, and begin to act. So ESD in the handprint genre became a planning process with teachers looking at ESD across past and present to reimagine sustainable futures. And here, drawing on the Chikamore et al. Work in Japan and on Ingrid Schudel's work in Africa, it was possible to look at how past and cultural heritage related to life experience in the present and could be taken into learning for a future reimagining of sustainable practices. And here's the Chikamore model, where it's centered on the student. And for handprint care, we built the materials around true stories, pictures, and animations, so that through looking and knowing the past and thinking into the present, the students were able to explore what is and what is not. And then through depth inquiry in their situation, they're able to look at what could be and what should be in reimagining the future and thinking the present, linking with an imagined future. So here, design solutions and change challenge assessment came into its own. So this framework for pedagogy in a subject discipline was applied to quite a number of materials that we had already, one of which was the mini-SAS puzzling of water quality together. And here we start off with some materials to introduce the idea, then some tools for finding out about water quality, working out possible solutions and trying out solutions. So the materials were deployed by the teacher in their own way. And in the South African setting, what we did is we used heritage to understand how past heritage was used in collecting water, looking at the water challenges in the present, and then looking at how to go out into the field with the mini-SAS tools to generate data on local quality, and then to load that onto the website and to begin to work more deeply in concerns in the area. And here we use the Sustainable Development Goals wheel to puzzle out local water quality concerns, the nexus matter of concern and the circle of care being the water in the particular area. And the students would describe the catchment around the Mpopomeni area where the wetlands lead into Midmar Dam, our main water supply. They looked at the scope of sewage overflows as a concern. And here they worked with the Sustainable Development Goals. And what they were able to do was to deepen and broaden their understanding of how the water quality affected health and well-being. It related to poverty, to the water quality itself, to gender, to the life in water, and to education processes that were important to bring about positive change in the area. So they were able to use what they'd found out in the rivers and what they'd worked out together to begin to open leading questions for action-centered inquiry. Now, being a school-based activity as part of the school curriculum, then there was a need to extend their assessment practices beyond the use of Bloom's taxonomy to significant learning. And Shumba Mandikonza and Lotse Sitka have done work to try to align this with the curriculum, where foundational knowledge in the subject comes to be assessed in the normal way, application of this knowledge through the engaged work, and then integration of the work into the local situation, as well as looking at the balance of the human and ecological dimensions that the students are able to learn with, the beginnings of ethics are caring Ubuntu and a sense of community, and finally learning how to learn. So here within this simple framework of handprint care, we start off with a concept of care and respect, and we're able to expand the curriculum. Teachers are working very positively with the new materials, like the cashew materials and the example that I gave you of mini-SAS. And what I've done here is I've provided you with a series of references that you can use to explore at your leisure if you're interested in deepening your understanding of the handprint care. And similarly, of course, in India, you have the Center for Environmental Education in Ahmedabad, and they are one of the global leaders in handprint care. So you can contact them and be able to get access to the program and some of the materials to start up and expand your own ESD work in your own local areas. So thank you for listening. I enjoyed doing this presentation.
Hello everyone, this is Juan Carlos from Mexico. I will share with you some reflections on the handprint care project and the Mexican case. One particular aspect of this Mexican case is that we are working with situated learning for sustainability. We are working with local narratives, local concerns, and local knowledge. And we are trying to make an articulation with this knowledge and narratives with the school context in the national curriculum. In Mexico, 15% of the population in Mexico is indigenous peoples, and we have more than 365 languages and variants in Mexican context. So this is a challenge in educational terms to work with this amount of languages in Mexico. And on the other hand, the indigenous people there is an overlapping between priority sites for conservation and indigenous, and where indigenous people live. But despite this situation, the indigenous people in Mexico, they live in a very poverty conditions, which is very contradictory here. And regarding educational and the local level, we realize that official curriculum is not recognizing the local knowledge and practices that indigenous people do. And we found that there is few local educational materials, and we need more methods in order to make this kind of connection between local knowledge and school context. On the other hand, we need to strengthen the quality of children's education because we need to improve the educational quality that they are receiving in the indigenous and rural context. In the framework of the handling care, we are working with the teachers. We want them to know how to use this 4 quadrant that already Rob and Katikeya mentioned about this, and local challenges and global challenges, and how they can work with these global and local challenges. We already conducted formal training with more than 400 teachers in different regions of the country, and under different modalities as well, face-to-face and blended, and now because of the pandemic situation, in virtual spaces. What they are learning is to live in a complex and interconnected world. For example, we are exploring the different challenges in the local level, for example, climate change, which is a very important aspect in Mexico. And we are taking the example of Milpa, in Mexican Milpa, because we think that it's a basis for a better understanding of the impact of climate change in health, nutrition, and agrobiodiversity. Because Milpa, it's a very widely known agricultural system in Mexico. It's a traditional system of food production that is originated in Mesoamerica, and it includes the combination of maize, pumpkin, and varieties of legumes. But however, this Milpa food system has increasingly been displaced in indigenous rural communities by modern processed foods, which is causing a very important vicious cycles, and with the impacts of climate change, reduced food production, causing families to buy industrialized food, which are generally of low nutrition value. And how we are working within this project is we are doing, the first step is a story documentation about positive, significant changes, sustainable material practices of local concerns as climate change, biodiversity, food production, water, etc. And then we do analysis curriculum, and we are trying to connecting these stories with the curriculum. And then we make a contrast of the curriculum and the stories that they have. And we have contrast between the local stories with global concerns. We create startup stories to work with the teachers. And then we have the design of development of the 4 quadrant model, and in which the teachers are developing their own learning progressions. And then they are evaluating this process evaluation in order to know how they are working and how they are relevant for children in multilingual context. And some lesson learned, the teachers are now addressing the climate change in the classroom from a situated perspective. They are connecting through the materials that we are developing with them. That, for example, climate change is a global problem, but they can identify how the climate change is impacting. And the curriculum ceases to be static and becomes dynamic because it's very relevant for the students and their families. I'm very happy to share with you this presentation, and thank you very much for the space for sharing my Mexican case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think there are 2 more presentations, and I would like to have Rob go live. Jim go live. Jim, are you there?
Greetings, everybody. I'm right here and ready.
All right. Good to see you, Jim. It's all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we have an exciting resource to share with you today. This is a book that is available by Thomas Hoffman and Raji Khurana on teaching the Sustainable Development Goals. And our first video is how we developed a simple little bookmark in mother tongue using 4 different languages to bridge people to the SDGs. So we're going to hear from Nolwazi Cele, who will be telling us a little bit about how this bridging resource works. Ananda, if you could flight Nolwazi's video, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi guys, it's Nolwazi here, and today I'll be showing you on how to use this bookmark, which is a guide on using the Sustainable Development Goals handbook. Let's say you are looking for a goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation. And you will find here that it is on page 30. Let's quickly go to page 30, and you will find all the information you need about it. The nice thing about this bookmark is that it is in 4 languages: isiZulu, English, Afrikaans, and Setswana.
Well, thank you to Nolwazi for that very brief video. The part you didn't see is how she opened out the bookmark to show the different languages. And then this really becomes a template that anyone who's wanting to work in mother tongue, whether it's Hindi or isiZulu, can actually use this template to bridge to the SDGs. So rather than translate everything, it's more a bridging resource. In our next video, we're going to go across to how we get to SDG 6, which is the SDG on water monitoring. And here we have a short video for you on a biomonitoring technique, which is using visible life, the macroinvertebrates, to actually tell us the story of the river.
So usually we get our water from glasses like this, from jugs, and from our taps. But actually, the water comes from the rivers and streams. And although lots of people are aware of how important water is, not only for our lives, but for our jobs and for our economy, what we're finding is people may be aware of the water issues, but they don't understand the actual quality of the water or the situation. So we've been working on a technique to measure the quality of the streams and rivers according to the little indicator organisms, the little macroinvertebrates that live in the streams and rivers. By seeing what can survive in the river or the stream, it tells us a story, and if only we can read that story, we can find out about the quality of that river. MINISAS stands for the Stream Assessment Scoring System, and it's a simple citizen science technique for measuring local streams and rivers. Many of us are aware of why water pollution is such a serious problem, but few of us understand the actual quality of our rivers. With MINISAS, you can work out the quality for yourself. And being citizen science, you don't really need to be a specialist. All you need is a simple little cup to catch the macroinvertebrate, the insect. You then put it into an old ice cream container, and you identify it using the dichotomous key, which is free of charge on the website, minisas.org. You key out from one side of the screen to the other and end up with the actual organism. And each one has a rating of sensitivity. And then you go to the score sheet and work out from the score what the quality or the health index of that river is, from blue all the way to purple, which is bad. With MINISAS, we can find out the actual quality of the stream, and the blue crab means it's unmodified and natural, all the way through green, yellow, and purple means the stream is modified and quite polluted. and that then stays on the Google Earth plane. One thing about doing biomonitoring, because you're in a real stream, is you need to be careful that you don't get sick if that stream is polluted. So if you're worried about the river because it looks polluted, always wear gloves. We use these disposable plastic gloves. You can buy them very cheaply at any pharmacy near you. You put them on so that you don't actually touch the water. Also, wash your hands regularly. It's a bit like COVID. Clean hands means a healthy body. So don't go eating after you've been doing your testing. Wash your hands carefully with soap to be safe when you're doing your water monitoring. The beauty of mini-SAS is you can do it in any natural stream like this one. In the video you can see Lindalani Hlongwane doing a mini-SAS in a natural stream bubbling over the rocks. Ayanda Lipiana works for Ground Truth and manages the mini-SAS website. He also verifies the data that we all contribute. Let's all help him and tell the story of our rivers and streams.
Hi, once you have done your mini-SAS test, please share your mini-SAS results on the mini-SAS page.
One exciting feature of mini-SAS is these macroinvertebrates occur nearly all over the world. So the United Nations are considering using it as a level 2 indicator for the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly for SDG 6.3.2 as a level 2 indicator to help us monitor streams and rivers in an inexpensive way.
Good, well, yeah, thank you everybody for helping us get that video together, and Anand and Shamita for screening it. We hope it all made sense. Sorry for the delay with the visuals, but if anyone would like copies of those videos, we can WhatsApp them to you. We also have WhatsApp versions that are a lower bandwidth, so one can use them on your phone as a way of explaining about mini-SAS. I know where time is running away with us, so perhaps we should leave it there. But another thought I would like to share is that all the materials we've developed in South Africa are copyright free, and we encourage people to adapt them to use them anywhere in the world. So if you'd like to use any of the mini-SAS materials, you want to do some water monitoring, you'd like to have copies of the bridging resources for the SDGs, we can provide you with the links to them. And then we suggest you don't just use them as they are, but adapt them for your own particular local needs. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was really exciting. We go now to the last very exciting presentation, of actually looking at communities being involved with action. So I would like my team to start streaming the last presentation of Go Global.
Hello everyone, I'm Shalini Nair, a member of the ESD Expert Net. Today I would like to talk to you about Go Global program. As some of you may be aware, Go Global is a virtual exchange program where educators and implementers working in the field of education for sustainable development can come, share their ideas and projects and learn from each other. So Go Global was initiated by a few members of the ESD Expert Net. In the initial years, the members themselves did these virtual exchange. In the first year, we had a program called as Go Global Green that worked with school students on food gardens and gardening, where the idea was to help students understand how food was grown, what are the food miles, and it had both a local and a global perspective. Similarly, in the following year, we had another program, Go Global Reclaim the Rubbish, where we worked with school students to help them come up with innovative ways of managing waste at their school itself. And in these 2 years, we saw that the program was a huge success, and we were wondering of how we could expand it to many more other educators and implementers. when came the idea of making a do-it-yourself manual and the current organic course, which my colleague Gio would explain in detail. What I would like to talk about is the structure of Go Global. So as you know, in Go Global we have a core team which consists of members from the ESD Expert Network. What we do is we design and implement programs regarding ESD, as well as we also help educators and other implementers organize virtual exchange. The other thing that we do is we have virtual communities that are on social media. The whole idea was to expand the reach to other educators and implementers who might be interested and may not know about this platform. So through having online media, it would be helpful for them to understand and participate in this program. And then we have our next group, which is the Go Global Implementers. So these are educators and implementers working in the field of sustainable development who have ideas, and they can have their own exchange programs through the Go Global platform. So we help them with technical aspects if they have any. And then we also have our Go Global ambassadors who are our well-wishers. So what they do is that they take these programs across to various conferences and workshops that they are a part of, and they help us reach many more implementers and educators who may be interested in doing a program like this. With this, I would like to stop, and my colleague Gio would take you through the other technical aspects and the other programs that we have at Go Global. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello everyone, my name is Giovanni. I am better known here in this group as a tech angel. I love to use digital technology in general to foster more meaningful learning processes, and that's my contribution to the Go Global group, working group of the ESD ExpertNet. Has already Shalini explained, after running the two pilot projects, Go Global Garden and Go Global Reclaim the Rubbish, we decided to create a manual to share our learnings and our learning journey with another implementers or multipliers who were interested to make this kind of virtual exchanges. So we create this do-it-yourself manual in an organic way. This is a very graphic, interactive format, which we work collaboratively, or we designed that collaboratively during 2017 together, and you can see here that this format let people discover what is Go Global in a very oriented way based on their interests. They can click everywhere in every single element. If they want to know about the activities, they can click here. If they want to go about this, note about the story or what are the philosophy behind the program and so on. This is quite an innovative way of presenting our learnings on our journey. For example, here you can see the history of the program. We were presenting the program in different forums and learning by doing that. And as I say, in 2017, we decided to create this manual, which is online in our website. You can look at it and learn about the program by yourself. And the huge step forward that we took, it was after doing this manual, we decided to make an online training, which was also in an organic way, which means that there is not only a teacher, but instead of that, we have 5 different facilitators, which every single one of them create an organic mind model, which is a graphical interactive representation of learning processes. And here you can see the 5 different organic mind models. The one from me, for example, focus on the technological aspects, how to implement a virtual exchange using correctly the different digital technologies available. And just to give you a short example, here is an example of a virtual reality tour made in one of the gardens in Berlin. So here the participants were able to look at the place and learn about not only the surroundings, but also looking at videos and materials made by their own class comrades in the other part of the world. So this is just an example of how these organic mind models work, but every single of these organic mind models are focused on different aspects. Every facilitator explain in a different way what is Go Global, and we match the participants of this training with different facilitators in order to offer a different perspective of the same topic. At the end of this course, we are proud to say that we train 8 new Go Global implementers who are already working in their own virtual exchanges, and this is our last goal from last year. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact me or contact Shalini, and we will be glad to help you to make your own virtual exchanges in a Go Global style. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, Shalini, for the presentation. And as we come to the end of our session, I would also request all the panelists to switch on their videos, but I think we can also take in questions. So Chong, I would like to hand it over to you.
Yeah, we heard all very interesting stories about the different kinds of work that all experts in different fields are doing. So it was great hearing Saransh about his Katha stories, and we look forward to hear and watch your stories. Stories are really powerful if you can come up with good stories which can engage and help people take action. So that's something I really look forward to. And also we heard Katerina talk about the cashew story. So that's one of the stories, as she rightly pointed out, cashew is just one story which you can use, you can apply to other concepts as well. So how you can take any concept for that matter and connect it in an interdisciplinary manner, like bringing in all the aspects like climate, politics, gender, and biology of that, and things like that. So that was also very interesting. And Rajeshwari for adding upon the concerns related to inclusive education. For example, regular or normal textbooks will not cater to the needs of inclusion. I mean, inclusive students, especially with students with disabilities. So that aspect that you brought out, so that was good to know. And Thomas, for sharing your work on systems thinking. Again, very important when you talk about ESD. You cannot avoid talking about systems thinking if you're talking about ESD. Then about the handprint care, there's upcoming work which is going to come out very soon, and we really look forward to. And thanks Kartikeya Sarabhai, Rob, and Juan Carlos for sharing the details about the upcoming book. And we also heard about Jim, about his mini SAS. So that's again something very, as he mentioned, that this resource can be used all over the world. So that's something which people from different parts of the world can take note of that. And especially if they're teachers here in the audience, they can always look for that resource, which is assessment of river or stream health, so that they can use that to test the water quality. And last but not the least, we heard about the Go Global from Giovanni and Shalini. So thank you very much for sharing all your work and those wonderful resources. At the end, I would say that we have come up with so many good resources, and maybe it's about time we come up with one more resource which can show us that this is how, mapping about those resources, this is what exactly you're going to get in this resource. So something, if we can come up with a map of all the resources that we have produced, that so that a ready resource for people who are going to use it, so that they know exactly what they're going to get out of different resources. So maybe one more resource that might help, I thought. So I think thank all the speakers and all the people who have shared their videos for the wonderful presentation and for the wonderful videos. And thank you all once again.
Yeah, Kranti, are there questions?
Shamita?
No, not. Yeah.
There is something that was.
There is a question which Saransh would like to answer live. I can see his. It's a question by Sheetal, which says that as there are many resources and materials for teachers, how can we translate and adapt these materials in a simpler manner? And how can we increase their motivation level so that they start to use this material? Very good question, Sheetal. Saransh?
Thank you so much, Sridhar, for posing that question. And I think, Shamita, you would know from all the training, and considering that there's so many trainers here, we all know from that. Because even far back in 2013, interacting with teachers, or even in the NCRT event, which we did in 2018, it was where I got to meet Dr. Shimre as well. The response was that it's the age of facilitation. There's so many things out there. There's so many resources that children have access to, and teachers are already burdened with a lot of work in the sense that there's so much activity to do. And as as we have learned through this pandemic, that teachers are not just burdened with the task of teaching, but many government teachers have to kind providing relief work, providing COVID relief work, and doing surveys and all of that in many government schools. So I think we are already burdening. Like, I don't think teachers can do the task beyond a point of time. We have to develop non-formal structures across which students can interact with and can learn with, so that the teacher's job is kind of, it becomes slightly easier than it is at the present moment. Because given the number of challenges that we are engaging with, I don't think it's superhuman. It would take a superhuman person to be able to engage on all the things. It is far too much to expect. But the thing is that there are non-formal structures through which teachers can be assisted. I think that can be that can be wonderful. But of course, teacher training itself is an important tool. But I think the role of these various storytelling mechanisms and processes through non-formal structures can be great. So that's how I would like to respond to that.
Yeah, anybody else would like to respond?
Shamita, Rajeshwari here.
Yes, please, Raji. Yeah, and then Rob.
I'd like to take a slightly different stand than what Saransh has made here. The problem is not in making the material simpler. I think it's the teacher and the teaching learning process. So you have to see the material itself as something that makes this whole experience, more meaningful, joyful. So if you see it as an over and above activity that has to be done in the classroom, I think it doesn't meet it's not the original intention of developing any material. It's to aid the teacher and the teaching learning process. So I think we have to get down to that. It's not about making the activities or the resources simpler, because they're made with I think with a lot of design and principles. They're not just out there. They're not pamphlets. So I think we have to think on those lines. Sheetal, I hope I answered your question.
Jim, I can see Jim his hand up. Jim, would you like to go? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is well done, Shamita and your team. Thanks to Anand for his support with technology, and all the many people who've contributed to help make these kinds of meetings possible. We live in some of the most troubled times the world has ever seen, and yet despite that, ESD is a shining light of hope, a shining light for a better future, and a shining light that really shows us that with sustained local work, caring for each other, caring for people and the common good, we can indeed make the world a better place. So thank you all for that very, very positive twist in times when the candle of life is burning very low globally, and yet ESD can nourish it and strengthen everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rob?
I'd like to side with Raji. I've been reading a little bit of Hannah Arendt's work and also Gandhi. The point that I learned today was this idea of real life stories. True stories are so important. And what Hannah Arendt and what Gandhi point to is a problem in education, where education kind of like became removed from the world and became self-referential. And Chong has commented on this, that it's quite rigid. The subjects speak to themselves, and there's often little reference to people's concerns. But in ESD, we're trying to sort of change that, and the curriculum is changing now. And what all the teachers that I worked with in South Africa on handprint care came up with is they said, wow, what's really important here is that we can see the knowledge in the world, and we can connect that knowledge to what is relevant and what matters to us. So that if education in Gandhi's terms is going to become truth-seeking experimentation, then we've got an ESD that is connected to the world and raising questions in the world that are relevant to the children. And I think that is the essence of so much in ESD. And Raji got right to the point there. And Saranj broadened that point to say that we can also look wider. But the classroom is a very important place of focus for ESD.
Any other comments from the attendees? I can see Amruta has her hand up. Amruta Khataukar. Can the IT team enable her to speak? Or maybe Amruta, you can unmute yourself. Or put a question in the Q&A. Yeah, there goes. Yeah, Amruta, you can speak now. No? Okay. So if you can put a question in the Q&A, that would be good. Yeah, it's been exciting to see all these very wonderful, material. And in the audience, we have a lot of teachers, we have administrators. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask. I know it's we've exceeded our time, and probably it's lunchtime for most of you, or past lunchtime. But if there are quick questions, we could take them. And in the meanwhile, if any of the panelists also want to comment on, please feel free to do so.
Shamika?
Yes, Saransh?
As we wait for some more questions, and I'm sure something will emerge, I would just want to also respond to, what we were talking earlier. And, Rob, I would like to refer to the conversation that we had a few years back about the emergence of the third space, right? Third space and the importance of it. And while the classroom is, the classroom and at home, we do the learning, the importance of third space cannot be underplayed. And I will also refer to the point which Raji had made earlier on inclusion, following the Black Lives Matter world over, much ago, Dalit Lives Matter movement has been on for a much longer time, though it has got a hashtag recently. But the thing is that its relevance cannot be overlooked at all in India's context. And diversity and inclusion is pretty much a theme for the corporates as well. And big consultancies are working on it now. So it all kind of refers to this third space also, that how to refer to the knowledge which is emerging in this third space, And being a queer activist and being in the queer spaces in India, I can see this whole conversation. And yesterday I was there at this FICCI event, which is an industry body event, and and I feel that there's a need to bring this conversation of inclusion, of diversity, because that's what gets diverse intelligence and diverse stories into our domain. And but everything cannot be attended through formal structures, because, as I said earlier, because if you try to attend everything to formal structures, a child may not get out of school through the entire day. And that's where I think, depending on the kind of needs that each region has, we need to attend it slightly differently, because each region will have its own challenge. So each school, or through the curriculum, you are able to attend a specific challenge which is most highlighted and needs to be engaged in the third space. Rob, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I really like what you're saying. But what's important that we're realizing in this work is there are third spaces. Okay, so if you take curriculum work, one of the third spaces that opens up is the space of the student concerns. Another third space that opens up is heritage and indigenous knowledge. Another space that opens up through inclusion is diversity. So what happens if one takes what Hannah Arendt was saying is that, that knowledge in the curriculum was locked out from the world, and children had to learn that world of abstract ideas to be successful in school. And now what we're doing is we're opening up the space of reconnecting through ESD knowledge with the world, taking up knowledge in terms of how it references to us. And these third spaces open for agency to work together, to hug hopefully soon, because being close to each other is really important, and social distancing is an alienating factor. So you raise a really important point that I'm just slightly broadening, and I think that you're opening up very successfully the idea that there are spaces to be opened for new freedoms, for new engagements, and for new clarifications in a changing world.
Yes. Ms. Sarabhai, I can see your hand up.
Thank you, Samita. One of the things which what was of concern to me is the fact that today's schools have less and less authority in being able to try out a new idea. You have to go to, in Gujarat, for instance, you have to go to the state government, who will allow or not allow an experimentation to happen, unless you talk about a private school. Now, bringing in more authority to the teacher to be able to localize materials, to be able to bring in new methodology, to be able to read, I think is very important in most of these innovations. So how do you give teachers the type of empowerment which enables them to do some of the exciting things we are talking about, is also of concern, at least in India, I think.
Dr. Shimre, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, it's true. Actually, even Saran's idea is, I would say that should also be explored. He rightly said that teachers are overburdened. But at the same time, it's ultimately the teachers who have to cater to the needs of the students. Otherwise, unless the teacher says, students don't tend to learn, because we have a set curriculum, fixed curriculum, and so only whatever the teachers are saying, that's being tested. And so it's all about tests. So at the end of the day, so that limits students' exploration as well. But if we can find a way out how we can reach to the students, not through the teachers, or because students are anyway exploring things of their own. So if we can do something like that, come up with something like that, that can always be done. But of course, you cannot substitute the teachers or the classroom teaching with anything else, because those are so important. So coming to the resources, yes, as I said, who have now tons and tons of resources. It's just like teachers are overburdened. They don't have time to explore those resources. And how do we make things easier for them so that they can get to the right resource? And so mapping, I think, is so important. Mapping of resources is so important so that they can map with the curriculum that they are teaching. And so that's one of the focus that handprint care that we are working on. So the topics that we are picking are part of their curriculum. So it's not a random topic that we have identified, so that teachers can actually make sense of the topics that we are dealing in the handbook, so that they can just pick up. And more importantly, the handprint resource material that's being developed is like, it can be used by teachers from teaching any discipline. So they're teaching science, maths, whatever, language, so they can just look at the source and pick up whichever is applicable for them and appropriate for the teaching learning process. So something I would really encourage somebody to take up this mapping task. It's not just the ESD expert network, but the tons of resources that's available, which have been prepared by CEE, by WWF, by CSE, and there's so many organizations who have prepared good resources. So how do we map these resources, and how can we make it easier for teachers or the users, to make it more friendly for them? So I think that's the need of the hour now. Thank you.
Dr. Shimre?
Yeah. I could see Dr. Bharucha's hand up. Would you like to say something?
Just a small comment. We have come to a stage, Shimre rightly pointed out, there's enormous amount of material. I think we have come to a stage in our program where we have to go back to the teacher and ask them, what do you want? How do we get about getting that to you? And also, what does this mean to individual schools? I think this is where we need to go now. Go back down to the teacher level and say, what is it that will help you do this? And I think that's what we need to give them. That's it.
Raji, did you have a question?
No, there's a question in the box here, question and answer box here. It's typed in the answer window, and this is from Sonali Das Haldar. She's, if I'm reading it right, she's asking for an advice, and the questions that follow is how a trust can foray into education for special children. What permissions are required from authorities? How can findings be arranged? So if I read, the key word that I took from this comment of hers or question of hers is trust. How do you build trust into education for special children? Though I'm not an expert in this field, I thought it must be answered. I would see engagement as an important process. I think engagement should be fostered with a range of stakeholders who are concerned with education for special children, because when there is an engagement, it brings out experiences, it shows the gaps, it tells it throws out learnings, and that is where I think a body of knowledge or discourse builds up. So engagement is critical. And the other one is a simple thing to do is having a community of practice. All those who are concerned with special education children, if they can come together, talk about challenges and learnings, I think it's going to really help. Now, permission from authorities is something very different, but the question is, what are the challenges that the sector is facing? Are they clearly known to the various stakeholders is the point. And if that can be arranged through formal or informal means, I think it will be helpful. Sonali, does that answer your question? And may I ask Katarina, do you want to add something to this? Katarina, is she around?
I think she was there a minute ago, but I can't see her now.
Okay, anyone else, please, if you have.
All right. So I think we come to the end of the session because we've already exceeded our time by an hour. And I can see that there are no more questions in the chat, but people are definitely free to get in touch with us. We've already posted the links and the website addresses through where you can get in touch with us. All the IDs of the ExpertNet members are on that website. So do get in touch with us. But what I would like to conclude, by saying here is, if we saw how the morning went, we discussed, there was this anticipation about what is the ESD ExpertNet. I think it's pretty clear through these 3 hours of what the ESD ExpertNet is. And I didn't want to bring up in the beginning. As you can see, it's a group of people, practitioners, academicians, researchers, people from the government, people from academia, who've just come together following their passion of education for a better world. So that's who we are. And you've seen most of us here today. It's still a much larger network, people who could not join because of time differences. But this is the ESD ExpertNet. It is by no means a closed body. It's open. So please feel free to get in touch with us, and to be a part, for us also to be a part of your network. What's our work? You saw our work today as we divided the morning, moving from training of trainers, influencing policy, ESD leadership program, mentoring young people, building capacities to undertake programs, the wide range of materials. And here I would like to say the innovativeness of this material has resulted from this cross-border collaboration. And I'm really happy that thanks to COVID, we have a way in which we can collaborate internationally. It's no longer a boundary. It's easy to work cross borders, and this really results in cross-fertilization of ideas, coming up with such beautiful, innovative material that can actually be used. So while there were different discourses here of, wanting to change the process of making the materials accessible to teachers, in India, I understand the ground reality, and the textbook is the only book through which a large majority of children in the country, almost 95% of them, learn. So an easy exercise would be to work with textbook writers and start mapping our material to the textbooks themselves. Saying, okay, this is a chapter and this is a good material for you to discuss this concept, and making it available as an easy, free to use website so that the teacher can immediately go there, as a link, click, see what she wants to, easily accessible on a mobile. Because unless you take the material to the teacher who's already burdened, I don't see any way in which this can really go forward. So the material is beautiful, but it needs to be used. And we have to make it easy for the user to actually use this material. So let's speak to them in a language that they understand, which is their textbooks. So if we can really plug this on in a manner and work with textbook writers, I think we do have a way ahead. And then we saw Go Global. It's a beautiful program linking young people across the world, helping them to understand different worldviews on a problem. I think Shalini and Gio really didn't give these examples of how they've been working with indigenous gardens and solid waste programs with schools across countries, overcoming the barrier of language, to discuss projects and to do this on. So this is what we do. I mean, these were the pillars of what the network has really developed over the last 10 years. And we hope that this inspires local action and moves us forward on our journey of meeting the SDG goals using education as a key enabler. Now, I hope that when we meet 4 years and 5 years or 10 years from now, we can say that, yes, we made a difference. We made all this difference. And in this, I would like to invite all of you, to be a part of the network. We would like to join hands with whatever work you are doing as we move forward in our journey. So thank you very, very much for staying with us through the morning, engaging actively, listening to us, and wish you a very warm day ahead. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year, everyone.
fitting finale. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Shami.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Beautiful
Bye.
talk.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Nice to see you, all of you. Take care.